Welcome to the Making It Simple podcast. My name's Stephen Allen, and today I'm joined by Fiona from the Natalie Kate Moss Trust. Welcome. It's good to meet you. I know we've met briefly before when you've been in to do some work with our team, but could you, for the audience, tell them how we originally got connected and how you heard about Linten?
Yeah, well, firstly, thank you very much for having me on the podcast. So we originally connected, so obviously the charity that I work for, the Natalie Kate Moss Trust, is a member of the Business Network in Manchester. And obviously that's where we kind of came across one another there. And I was speaking to one of your colleagues, Mike, about some of the work that we do around managing blood pressure in order to prevent brain hemorrhages. Now, our work is all focused on the prevention and treatment of brain hemorrhages. So as a charity, we do go into companies and we talk about the importance of checking your blood pressure, managing your blood pressure, how to do all that, what the numbers mean, all the finer details around blood pressure. And we came into Linten to talk about that as well. So that was kind of the initial phase, so to speak, and then the partnerships kind of developed from there.
And from that day, we've now got a blood pressure monitor in the office, and the team regularly check their blood pressure.
Yeah, great.
It's really important. And perhaps you could tell us a little bit about the why and why you do what you do, and how the charity came about.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're called the Natalie Kate Moss Trust because unfortunately my sister Natalie had a brain hemorrhage when she was 26. So that was back in 2011. And she was perfectly fine. She was healthy. She was just going about her sort of normal life as a 26-year-old. And she was actually at Greg James's Feet Up Friday. I don't know if any of your audience remember that. But he used to have an audience that came in. And she was in that audience and she had a horrendous headache, which is a really typical symptom of a brain hemorrhage. It's called a thunderclap headache. And she got rushed to hospital and unfortunately after 5 days in intensive care passed away. And obviously as a family, when someone's perfectly healthy and suddenly something like that happens, particularly when they're so young, it really shook up our whole world. As it did then for the wider community, friends from school, obviously she hadn't left school that long ago, friends from university. And so there was a lot of people rallying around wanting to help. And I particularly remember my mum and my brother saying, this isn't going to be in vain. We'll do something. We'll find a way to bring some positive out of this. So we reached out to the University of Manchester and we talked to them about, anything that we could support, I suppose, for us to kind of find a way to, as I say, find a really something positive out of this. And at that point, there wasn't really much research being done into hemorrhagic stroke. So a brain hemorrhage is a subtype of stroke. And so through those initial conversations, we started to talk to them about, okay, well, could we fund something? Could we start to develop a program? And from that one conversation, they developed a program. They were then able to use the funds that we gave them to leverage funds from other bigger organizations such as British Heart Foundation, Stroke UK, etc. And over the last now 13 years, that partnership with them has developed considerably. I think over that time period, we've actually been able to generate about just under £500,000 for them. And from that, they've been able to then leverage a further £6 to £7 million as well. So the research within the university has grown exponentially. So now from that one project that they did, there's 35 researchers in that team. They developed a Centre of Excellence for Brain Research in the University of Manchester called the Geoffrey Jefferson Brain Research Centre, which is a nice tongue twister. And they've also developed a treatment, which this year is actually being rolled out across the whole of NHS England, which is proving to reduce mortality after somebody has a brain hemorrhage at 1 month by 30%. So really big, huge step forward, which is, when we go back to the conversations I had with my family about wanting to find a positive in this, that's a huge positive to come out of it. So obviously over that time period, the charity has developed quite a lot. And over the last 3 years, we've really kind of refined what we're about and we've grown quite considerably. And as part of that, we really wanted to focus on the work around prevention as well. So it's great that we can develop treatments and we can understand brain hemorrhages, when they happen, how do we improve the outcomes of patients, but how do we stop them from happening in the first place? Because there's too many cases that happen. There's 4.6 million cases actually every year. And currently only 60% of those people will leave hospital. So, the statistics around them are really sort of really devastating. So great if we can improve the treatment, but even better if we can prevent them from happening. And that's where this blood pressure piece comes in, because high blood pressure is a leading cause of lifestyle-related brain hemorrhages. But yeah, a third of the population, or about a third of the population, has high blood pressure, and 50% of those people are undiagnosed. So, there's a lot of people out there who aren't checking their blood pressure, don't really know what the numbers mean, don't know what affects it, and it just kind of, not that they don't know anything about blood pressure. We go to the doctor room, they check it, and we kind of have a vague idea, but we don't really understand it. So it's giving people education, awareness, and getting them into the habit of checking more often and making them take back responsibility of their health too. So that's our prevention campaign. And obviously, the more companies that we can go into, like Linten as well, and kind of spread that message. And then obviously as a company as well, if you guys can take that forward, as you said before, you've got a blood pressure monitor here, everyone's checking their blood pressure, the better, because it really helps expand that message as well, and hopefully helps prevent further brain hemorrhages from happening too.
Sounds amazing work that you've been doing, and leaps and bounds from where you first started. And any charity is pretty much like a business. It still needs the back office to function to enable it to do the good work that comes out the back end there. But the sad fact in all of this, really, as well, is that cyber threats are not just limited to companies. Charities get affected in the same way. So thinking about the technology that you use in the charity as your tools to enable you to do what you do on a day-to-day basis, could you tell us a little bit about the technology that you use and what's important to you as a charity?
Yeah, absolutely. And you're completely right, because I think obviously, telling you the story of, the charity, obviously we've gone from a family-run charity that at the beginning was very much like whatever money comes in, we pass it on to the university, and it was very relaxed. It was, side hustle, for want of better words, for us. And as it's grown and as we've become more established, we've really been conscious of our operations in the background, and especially as our team's grown as well. And we manage an awful lot of data. We've got a lot of people donating, coming to events, signing up to numerous things, and whether that's our emails, whether that's our blood pressure reminder emails that we send out every month. So there's a lot of data, there's a lot of things that we need to make sure that we're managing and protecting. And I think that's what's been really great about working with you guys particularly, is I think it can be quite confusing for a lot of people about what's safe, what's not. We've used different platforms in the past which we thought were great, but actually then you come and talk to you guys and you think, well, actually that's not the safest it could be. So we're actually going through an exercise at the moment where we're kind of migrating onto a new software to manage all of our documents, which you guys have helped with as well, and making sure that we're as secure as we can be. Because I think, especially when my team works, they're all freelancers and they all work remotely as well, it's a lot harder to manage that than if we were all in one office. I gave them their computers, so I think that's been something that we're really aware of, and we're becoming more and more aware of it, particularly, as I say, everyone's freelancing, so they might be working at a coffee shop one day and then using public Wi-Fi, and that can put them at risk as well. So I think it's one thing being aware of it's moving on to different platforms, but it's having that awareness and knowledge and understanding is really, really key about what to do and what not to do and what to look out for as well. I remember Mike coming into the business network where I mentioned we met you guys originally, talking about particularly things like, using certain public Wi-Fi's, like, the airport or anything, and people can tap into your computers that way. And a number of other things. And I think a lot of people don't know that, and that's where they're put at risk. So the more support we can have from experts like you guys, the better, I think.
I think convenience is where a lot of people get duped into doing things that they wouldn't normally do in day to day.
Yeah.
But it sounds like you've come on quite a journey with your technology since you were first founded. Could you think perhaps of an example of a tool or something that you currently use that other charities that are starting up might be able to learn a lesson from you as to where you've got to arrive at that you think might be useful for them?
Yeah, I think across everything that we do, we use lots of different platforms. I mean, we're a small team still. So like time is very much of the essence. So there's you talk about convenience there, right? So there's one thing, how do we make sure that we're working as hard as possible and using tools, using AI, particularly to make our systems work more efficiently. But then there's also the security side of it. So it's balancing things as much as possible. We do use, whether it's ChatGPT a lot, to kind of help with, creating, whether it's idea creation, whether it's sort of content creation as well. So that's really, really helpful. Even just things like notes, note takers, Fathom note takers that we've used, particularly on our meetings, are really, really helpful tools to kind of not having to be writing up notes after a meeting and email them across, and that saves another half an hour from the meeting. So it's like, how can we use certain tools to help with time efficiencies? I think that's what's really been key for us, as well as the data piece as well. I think the shift, we're currently moving from Google to Microsoft. I think that's going to be a huge game changer for us, and how can we use the tools within that to, again, help us be more efficient, as well as secure as well. And they're the two kind of key words that are really important for me as well. So I think if there was other charities thinking about this now, I would really be thinking about, okay, how can you use tools to help you with your efficiency, but more probably, arguably more important, well, definitely more importantly, your security as well of that data and of that information.
Security is definitely key.
Yeah.
I know that we've been helping you with a digital audit as well. Is there any surprises for you that came out of that?
We've not currently got there yet. Mainly we're working on sort of this migration. I think that will come. I am sure there won't be, well, there probably will be surprises, but there'll be I probably expect some surprises to come up in some way. So, yeah, I think that's going to be a really, really helpful tool. I think as I mentioned before, we're in this very much a transition period where we're growing quite a bit. So I think what's important for us is laying foundations to help us go on to that next stage. I have no doubt that as we grow our team in the next sort of 2 years, 3 years, we might have to change tact again. And I think that's just growing pains for any business as well, that you always kind of reach that next sort of boundary where you need to make some changes.
Any business or charity, growing pains are the hardest thing. And what tends to happen is things get layered on top of things on top of things, and you get what is actually quite a complex solution at the end of it. Whereas we're talking today about the Making It Simple podcast. So have you got any sort of ideas of how you've kept things simple within the charity and used technology in its simplest form to actually be effective and not overly complex? Because I would imagine a lot of the people that are working with you are giving some of their time as well, and you need to be as efficient as you possibly can with those people's generosity.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. And I think, you want to use one tool, that's great, and we'll use that over here. We've used things like Trello boards, and then suddenly we'll use Slack for something else. And then we've got, I don't know, our Google Drive, and there's this and there's that and there's something else. And they've got slight nuances to, they're slightly different over here, but actually we can bring everything together. So when we originally came to you guys and started having this conversation about moving things across, we literally listed every single tool that we used. And that could be from, certain different AI tools, storage tools, project management tools, etc. And when you looked at that list, it was so long. But then you could argue, oh, no, but we need that and we need that and we need that. But it can be quite confusing. So it's like, how do we streamline as much as possible? I think that was really important to me. And, in all of our team meetings, there's someone that wants, okay, well, can we make an Excel sheet about that? And can we have something on, the Trello board about that? And it can get really confusing. So I think there is a human element of how do we oversee it and make sure that it isn't expanding, too much.
So when you are overseeing that, then if you were to strip it back and start again from scratch, where would you start with your technology stack? What would you do differently?
I think what would I do differently? I think that's a really interesting question. I think I would probably start with actually thinking about my technology strategy as I start, because I think almost what people do is think about it is kind of just go along with, oh, we'll go and use that and we'll add that on and we'll add that on. We'll use that tool and we'll bring that in. Whereas actually, if you can start with going, what tools do we need? And actually, how are we going to optimize them? And then kind of build those into the strategy from the get-go. I think that would help a lot more and actually stop you from having those problems of having too many tools, too many things are everywhere, bits of information here, there, and then ultimately with your team, bits get missed. So my team might put something in Slack and somebody says, oh, well, I prefer using the Trello board. And someone else says, I don't like using Excel sheets, So even if you have systems, you have people that don't like certain systems and they just naturally lean towards using something else. So I think having the strategy from the get-go and how the strategy helps define the way you work would actually be probably more beneficial to the ways of working with a team as well. So I'd probably recommend that, and I would probably think about streamlining those tools as much as possible, rather than kind of building out too many.
And I'm thinking about some of the things that we do in our business. It's the support packages that we provide are secure support and secure support compliance. And the compliance secure support is really for businesses that handle sensitive information. And from what you're saying, it doesn't sound like you're actually storing a lot of necessarily sensitive information. But if you're doing a reminder service, as an example, for people to do their blood pressure, people are actually then seeing your reminders as coming from a source that's trusted. So it's really important then that your cybersecurity is in place to make sure that your trust doesn't get abused by somebody piggybacking on you to try and compromise somebody else. So when we think about that, what has been the factors that have been most important for you in thinking about cybersecurity and compliance around what you're doing on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, I think that's where it's been a massive part of the conversation that we've been having with you guys. Because going back to what I said before, sometimes you don't know what you don't know. And I think particularly with cybersecurity, and actually because cyber, the risks, can change all the time. You've got to keep, ahead of yourself to kind of make sure that you're protected from those risks. I think sometimes it's really hard for somebody like myself that doesn't work in tech. And so actually leaning on the advice of you guys is really, really helpful to know, like, how can we keep ourselves protected? And in what ways do we need to be doing that? Because as much as we try to make sure that, we've got like even the right sort of data management, we're making sure that we're kind of getting the right permissions and things like that. That's one thing. And then there's, another thing around the actual security and making sure that we've got the right protections in place. Where do we need those right protections? Like, do we have them in the right spaces? I don't know. Sometimes it's making sure that we're asking the right people for the answers rather than assuming ourselves. Because I think if we just assume, oh, we're fine, that's when we're probably at risk. And I think that's been the biggest learning curve for me, is actually not being afraid to reach out and actually going, I don't know. I'm not an expert in everything. That's why I want to outsource here or reach out to a certain type of professional in that space, because you're the expert in that area for a reason. So can we have some advice here, and what do we need to do to keep ourselves protected? Because you're right, even though we don't necessarily collect and look after a lot of people's really sensitive information, it's still their names, it's still their email addresses, and if that is compromised, then to your point, why would people, and if they see that their email's been compromised, why would they then trust to kind of sign up, maybe not even to just our email list, but then to other people's email lists as well. So it does have a knock-on effect. Yeah.
I think that's where our secure support was born, because many, many years ago, we used to provide IT support and a few licenses. And then we would say to one of our clients, what are you doing about your cyber security? And they'd say, well, if something happens, we'll just phone you. It's like, well, we've advised this and we've recommended this, but you haven't put it in place, or there was a cost barrier that meant you didn't want to do it. So we found that we were getting pushback from a cost perspective on clients, but then when something actually went wrong, the first people that would call is us. And we would be in a position where we were saying, actually, we can't help you with that because you didn't take our advice or you didn't follow it. So this is where secure support was born. So what this does now is it gives businesses and charities all of the measures in place that they need to have to be as cyber secure as they possibly can. Ultimately, they still need to follow process and procedure, but it effectively, if they follow all of the things that we recommend, that we now advise, these are the things, it means that they can now relax at night and know, I've got all the things in place. There's nothing I need to be asking to check. Is there something I don't know? they know it's there. And if they need to go for something like Cyber Essentials, it's effectively almost saying, yep, I've got it, tick, 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 all the things are in place, I've got all of the things to become compliant, and it's the peace of mind that comes on the back of that. So that's originally where it was born, to help people and advise. So it's really interesting to hear that that's the sort of thing that you're thinking as well, because you're wanting to use an IT company that gives you the advice and the guidance.
Well, and it's also, you got to think of like the capacity and time within our own charity as well. And as I said before, I'm not an expert in this field. So rather than me trying to figure it out and probably do it wrong, I see it less as a cost and more as an investment. Obviously, it's a cost, and we've got to work that out from a financial perspective, look at our budget and etc. And be mindful of the fact, and this is always a challenge for me, is be mindful of the fact that we are a charity. Those funds come from, funding elsewhere. So we've got to be mindful of, what the operation costs within the charity are. But if it's helping us to protect all that data, protect, the charity in itself, it is an investment more than anything. But yeah, I think having the right support is crucial.
That's right, because of course you can do all the best things in the world, and if something actually happens that damages the reputation, then the charity will probably not be able to operate in the same manner it has been. So it's really important to protect the reputation and make sure things are done in the right way.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting to hear what you're saying there, because we often talk to a lot of our customers that are in the manufacturing sector, or they're in a particular sector and they know their sector inside out, but they're not technology people. They want somebody to hold their hand through the technology, and they want it to be a tool to enable them to do whatever their business or their charity is, to enable them to do it in the most efficient manner.
Yeah.
And that's what we're here for, really, is just to make sure that people can continue to run their businesses in the most efficient manner possible.
It's the same way, like I see it in the same way, like anything, whether it's, to that point, your industry inside out, great. But then you've also got to manage your accounts. Now, you're not an accountant, but you need that, right? So you're going to need to reach out and get the right support there in order to make your business work as well as possible by having the right financial support. In the same way, you might not be a marketeer, so get a good marketing company to come and support you. There's all these different areas which you need for your business, charity, whatever, to thrive. But you can't be everything, or maybe even internally your team can't be everything. So it's actually making sure that you've got that support there.
And I would imagine that most people could attempt at doing some IT support as well. You could probably think, I could do that, I could install that. And we hear that quite often as well. But it's normally the business owner that's saying, oh yeah, I can just install that, I can look after that bit of security. And yes, they maybe haven't attempted it, but they don't do everything that we would do as part of it. And so they've only done a little bit, but they think they've done it. And they're just getting into that situation of what they don't know. But I want to ask you for your bright insight. So we have a segment on this where we ask each guest for an idea, something they're doing, something that's different, some area where you use technology to simplify in your business, and a bright idea that might help others. So I'm going to ask Jamie to bring over our talking stick, which is our bright idea. And I shall hand you the talking stick.
That is hilarious.
And you can tell the listeners your bright insight for us.
So a bright insight, particularly with what software or whatever we may be using?
It could be anything. It could be the way that you're using some technology. It could be a piece of software. It could be a business process or procedure that you have in your business. Something that, if anybody was to be starting up a business or a charity today, that they should do straight away. It's your one piece of advice for our listeners.
I would say it straight away. My one piece of advice would be using a note. As simple as that is using a note taker in meetings. The amount of meetings that we have, and obviously then you're trying to capture ideas, and you can't really be fully sometimes in the meeting if you're scribbling away and then you've forgotten it. Having a note taker that can just record it, send 30 seconds after your meeting going, these are the key points. This is the action that you need to take and I need to take, and whoever, is so incredibly key. I think it's such a time saver. It's so simple. There are loads of other things that we do, and we're trying to optimize and get people onto our, mailing lists and support them better and etc. But from a really simple process, the amount of time that saved me, and I know it saved my team as well. And even to look back at, if I say, we had a meeting back in, I don't know, March, and I can't remember certain key points, I can literally just go back onto my account, on my note taker account, and look back at that and really clearly see everything that we spoke about. So I think that's been a huge time saver. I think if you're setting up anything, I think that would be really, really key. Other things, I think potentially we're looking at building out other things, and whether that is how do we acquire more data and use technology in a way to get people involved in the charity and kind of get them on board with our messaging. But I might not go into that yet because we're kind of in the process of setting that up. So I don't know fully what that looks like. But I think sometimes we make things too complicated, particularly with tech. Going back to our conversation before, we try and use this platform and that platform and that platform, and actually just streamlining and using things and going, well, what am I already doing? And how can I just use AI to just make that more efficient? I think is a much better way of looking at it rather than overcomplicating.
Do you know what? I can't wait to introduce you fully to the Microsoft platform and the note takers that come as part of Teams, because I think you'll find it so invaluable in your business to enable you to do those things that you're needing to do. So.
Yeah. I'm a big fan of sort of using something that helps you be more efficient, whilst not obviously taking the human element away from it or too much. And actually it just everything becoming, computerized, or, everything just being written for you. But I think there's lots of tools out there that can save us a lot of time.
Well, I'm sure our listeners will...
Should I keep this on?
You can, if you want to keep hold of it. We'll be very keen to hear a little bit about you, Fiona, as well. So I'm going to just ask you a few quick fire questions so that we can just get a little insight into you as a person as well. Morning or night owl?
Morning.
Wine or beer?
Oh, that's not a quick fire question. We'll go with wine.
Red or white?
White.
Coffee or tea?
Coffee.
Sunset or sunrise?
Sunrise.
Book or movie?
Book.
Beach or city?
Beach. Yeah.
Pizza or pasta?
Pizza.
Apple or Microsoft?
Microsoft.
Good answer.
Yeah. It depends on the product, but I can't use like Apple Macs or anything I don't know. But yeah, we'll go Microsoft.
Yeah, I like that answer. That's a good one. Well, thank you very much for joining me on the Making It Simple podcast. But can you just tell us before we finish off today, how can people get in touch with you? How can they support you as a charity? And feel free to give us all of those web addresses and everything else.
Perfect. Well, obviously, thank you very much for having me. If anyone does want to obviously find out more about the Natalie Kate Moss Trust, just visit our website, which is www.nataliekatemoss.co.uk. We're on Instagram and LinkedIn and Facebook and YouTube. And if they do want to find out more, the best place to go is our website. I think one of the most important things, if I can get your listeners to take away one thing from this podcast, is the point around blood pressure, and to encourage them to go away and check their blood pressure as well. And if they do want to find out more about that, again, to look at our website. And if they are, want to be reminded, sign up to our monthly reminder. We have lots of helpful resources on there. And it's really, it's not just a point around how do we push our message, but it's really important for every single individual to be mindful of their blood pressure, because we're not, unfortunately, taught about it that much, but it's just so critical to our health for so many different reasons beyond just brain hemorrhages as well. So, so as I say, to find out more about it, just go to our website, www.nataliekatemoss.co.uk.
Do you still have capacity to go into other businesses and do education pieces as well? And
we do that ongoing. So we have capacity coming up. Obviously, we're almost at the end of the year, but and I'm sure people won't want to be talking about this in December. But we do it all the time, and, we want to get out in front of more people. And as, the more people we do reach out to, the better, because hopefully it kind of ensures that, we are hopefully, catching those cases of high blood pressure and hopefully preventing brain hemorrhages from happening.
So finally, what's next for the charity?
There's lots of things. We're really trying to expand as much as possible from a fundraising point of view, from a prevention campaign point of view as well, from a team point of view. Particularly with our prevention campaign, we're running a lot more awareness days. So we go out to the streets, whether it's Manchester or Liverpool or wherever. We have a stand. We talk to people one-on-one about blood pressure. So we're getting in front of around 300 to 500, depending on the month, people through those awareness days and talking to them about, their blood pressure and testing them. We're also developing a program to go out into schools to speak to children about that. We're almost getting that signed off by the PSHE Association. We're pretty much at the final stages of that. So we can launch that next year, which is really exciting because then that conversation starts from a younger age too. And that's, I think, could be key to this prevention campaign. And then beyond that, we have lots of events, lots of races. Some of your team ran the Manchester Half for us in really recently, the beginning of October. So, more of that to come. So, we're really looking at how we can expand this mission and ultimately prevent more, cases of brain hemorrhages, obviously treat them better when we can too. So, how can we expand that research at Manchester University is probably key to that. A lot of work going on behind the scenes.
So technology comes with its associated stress, but perhaps you could tell us a little bit about the things that people can actually do to prevent brain hemorrhages and things that they could actually be doing and how to identify the problems.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when we talk about, so as a charity, we talk about treating and preventing brain hemorrhages. That's kind of our mission. And obviously the prevention campaign, I mean, brain hemorrhages can be caused by a number of different things. There are a number of different factors involved, but one of the leading causes is high blood pressure. That's why we focus our prevention campaign on high blood pressure. Not only is it a leading cause, it's one of the most modifiable, because it's largely due to lifestyle. A lot of cases of high blood pressure are due to lifestyle. Sure, there are certain other factors that I know plenty of people who are very fit, young, healthy, and still have high blood pressure. It's not always to do with lifestyle. There can be genetic factors involved as well. But the majority of cases are due to lifestyle. So that could be things such as stress. So stress is a particularly major contributing factor to high blood pressure. And I think what's really important about stress to recognize is, well, firstly, I think we're all a little bit too attuned to stress, and we're just a bit like, oh, we're all stressed and everyone's stressed and stress is normal, which is not true. We are not used to the amount of stress that we now live in our very modern lifestyles. Our bodies have not evolved to it from a Homo sapien point of view. And I think what we used to think was stress when we were being chased by lions and tigers, our bodies would respond now in the same way as if our lives are in danger, but actually our lives aren't in danger. It's just a really busy day, or we're stuck in a queue, or, we've got a load of emails to reply to. But the problem is our body is still responding. So our body's still getting pumped with adrenaline and cortisol. And when we have too much of that can have a big impact on our body from a physiological point of view. So we need to be mindful of not even just the major stresses that happen in life. When somebody dies, people talk about moving house being the most stressful thing in life, which I would argue against, but still it can be quite stressful. Something major happens, a health problem, etc. Sure, they're stressful, but there's also lots of micro stresses that happen in life. To my point before, you get stuck in a queue, you got a busy day at work, your emails are full. And I think we need to be mindful of how those micro stresses are adding up and contributing to us being quite stressed a lot of the time. So finding ways to manage our stress is really, really important. And I think what we try to do with our prevention campaign and through our own podcast as well, which is called Prevent the Preventable, it talks a lot about how we can be more mindful of, living in a way that's preventing things that potentially could be prevented, such as high blood pressure. We try and help people draw the dots. So, how is your stress affecting your blood pressure? And therefore, how is your blood pressure potentially causing other things, such as a brain hemorrhage? So stress is one thing, a really major contributing factor. Other things are things like sleep. So making sure that we get adequate amounts of sleep, good quality sleep as well, and not just being like, I'll sleep when I die, ridiculous things like that. But actually, I fundamentally believe that sleep is actually the bedrock to our health. If we can sleep well, we are probably going to wake up less stressed. We are probably going to eat better as well. We're not tired, and so we're eating junk food. We might not be therefore stressed, so we don't, go and be like, I need a glass of wine. We might have more energy to then go and do exercise. It's a bit of has a knock-on effect to the rest of things. So sleep well, eat balanced whole foods, not loads of processed foods, not foods that are full of salt. Salt is a major contributor to high blood pressure. Alcohol, another major contributor, smoking as well, and also carrying too much weight. So, being overweight is also a major contributor to high blood pressure as well. So I think being aware of those factors is important. But what I would say to your listeners is check your blood pressure first. Because if you check your blood pressure, then you know where you're at. It's a starting point. And then you can decide, what do I need to do? Or do I need to do anything to bring my blood pressure down, to modify my blood pressure, to make myself, to look after that a bit better? It could be a tweak. It could be that you eat less salt. I've heard plenty of stories like this. People drink a bit less, lose a few kilograms or whatever they feel like they need to do. But they just need to be honest with themselves. This is where my blood pressure is at. Is my lifestyle really helping to contribute to that? If not, what do I need to change? It's a bit of an honest conversation that you need to have with yourself.
Fiona, you got me thinking I need to have my blood pressure taken. So what do I do with this then?
Okay, so the most important things to remember when you're checking your blood pressure is that you're doing it in a calm environment. So don't do it when you're,
Like
either
now, well,
calm environment at work, perfect place. But trying to do it where you're not rushing around, you've not just done some exercise, you've definitely not just had some alcohol or anything like that. Doing it in a place where you can sit down, take a few breaths, and just try and be calm. The calmer you are, the more accurate the reading is. If we're rushing around, it's probably going to affect the reading too. So, sitting down, not crossing your legs when you're doing it over bare, putting it over your bicep and doing it over bare skin. So not doing it over clothes is really important. So you'll obviously...
Like that.
Yeah, exactly. So you'll wrap the cuff around your arm. And what's great about this is that nowadays it's all done sort of digitally. So you press the button, it will inflate, it'll take about 40 seconds. It will go up, like the numbers on the screen will start going up, and then it'll come down and show you your reading. Back in the day, they would have had to, use a stethoscope, pumping it, and it's all very complicated. But why this is great now is that it's so much more accessible. So you can buy this monitor and have it at home and do it yourself. And that's largely the best place to do it. You can check your blood pressure, obviously, in a GP, in pharmacies. But in those environments, what might happen is you might get white coat syndrome, where you're worried about the actual result. So therefore you get stressed and you get an artificially inflated reading.
But why is this better than my watch?
It's more accurate. So when we've spoken to the clinicians at the University of Manchester and our trustee, who's particularly an expert in hypertension, he would say that this is much more accurate at this stage than watches. That will come, I imagine, but just not yet.
What does that mean?
At the moment, your reading is 131/92. So these two numbers essentially mean that this top number is just systolic pressure. That is the pressure of your heart when your heart is beating blood out around the body. The bottom number is your diastolic pressure, and that is when your when your heart is at rest, filling up with blood, ready to pump around your body. So these two numbers mean that your blood pressure is absolutely fine. Typically, perfect blood pressure, which is a little bit of an arbitrary number, is 120/80. Yours is 131/92, which is perfectly fine, particularly as you're sat here being recorded by on a podcast. I'd expect it to be slightly elevated as well. In the UK, if you're, there is a chart here, which is amazing that you guys have it. If it's over 140/90, which that's fine, but typically if it's over 140/90, you're considered having stage 1 hypertension. But if you went into a doctor and had, 140/90, they would basically be like, it's a tiny bit high, but it's absolutely fine. They wouldn't be worried about it. Now, if your reading is like, you're particularly looking at the top number, if it's like 180 over 100, let's say, you'd be starting to get really worried, and we potentially would take you, would start thinking about taking you to a walk-in centre where they can look at you. I've heard plenty of cases where people have done their blood pressure, they feel absolutely fine, and they've just done it by chance, and they've had a reading of like 220/110, let's say, which is like, you need to be looked after in some sort of treatment now, because there's a potential anything could happen. If you imagine your blood pressure like a pressure in pipes, going around some, whatever, or a hose or something like that, the more pressure that's going through it, the more it's going to start like forcing its way through little cracks or joints or things like that. And then essentially over time, that'll weaken those pipes and then lead to a burst. And that's the problem. So it's called a silent killer because it's creating these problems and wearing down vessels, particularly in your brain, where they're very fragile and very thin, delicate over time. And that's the worry. So that's why we just need to be on top of it and managing it, and not letting it just sort of cause any underlying issues without us knowing it.
Good to know. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
You've been listening to the Making It Simple podcast. It would really help if you could like and follow on LinkedIn, Instagram and TikTok. And also tune in to our next episode. See you soon.